Okay, so this is going to be a video basically on installing Airsim. I did have an old video, which you might have came from, that's a little bit outdated. So I was just going to go over some how to actually do that because, oops, it's on my own channel, because it's a little bit of an annoying process and some things have changed. One of the biggest things in this video is I explicitly warned in the beginning to not use Visual Studio's 2022, to only use 2019. Well, if you want the newest version of Airsim, that has now changed. Now it's the opposite. You need to actually use 2022 and not use 2019. So the first part of this video is actually going to be on like basically how I actually got my Airsim up to date, because it's a little convoluted because the newest Airsim wants to be built on Visual Studio's 2022. So if you try building it with 2019, you'll run into a lot of errors, and especially if you have the old version of Airsim still on your computer, you will typically run into problems with that. So we'll go ahead and get started. So quick little coverage too, because this is important information. Airsim as a project was made by Microsoft, right? It was maintained by Microsoft, but they actually decided to close it. I think it was for a couple of reasons. I don't know Microsoft, so I don't know why they decided to close it. But they're no longer maintaining it or developing it, so that kind of sucks. But fear not, because we have this now. We have Coliseum, who is basically a fork of the Microsoft main. So it's basically an open source project that is now being made, and there's a lot of people contributing to it. So in the future, this will be how you can get updates to Airsim. We're going to just install like the latest version of Airsim before they actually decided to close the project. But in the future, if you're confused, why is Airsim not being updated? That's because they stopped developing it. So now this is probably your best bet. I'm not aware of any other open source forks of it. So yeah, so shameless plug too, because no Tyler and everything, great guy. So yeah, definitely check this out if you want to update in the future. For now, the latest version of Airsim is pretty similar to this, but I'm sure in a few months from now, they'll start to differ, and there'll probably be some features in here that you won't be able to get with the latest release of Airsim. So with that out of the way, let's move forward. So I'll specify in the video exactly where you can skip, but the first thing I'm actually going to cover is especially for people who are trying to update their Airsim. It's a little bit of a pain, so I'm going to cover that first, but if this is your first time installing it, I'll have like a little timestamp for where you can skip to, because everything's fresh for you and you should need to do that. I'll also have the documentation and the description so you can follow along, but I find it still useful to have a video sometimes for these kind of things, so do both. I'll also keep it on the side of the screen here as much as I can, but yeah, so let's get started. So the big thing, if we actually want to, and this will be in the documentation, the big thing we'll have here, oops, that's what I wanted. When we actually want to, sorry, just new to OBS, so hopefully it's working. The big thing we'll want when we're trying to actually get this solved is we need to uninstall the original version of Airsim that we have, and that's pretty huge because you'll have a lot of conflicts if you do not do that. So to do that, if you already have an Airsim installed, you probably know where it is. Let me find out where mine is really quick, actually. I actually forget. Okay, so I actually found it. It was in Documents. I think that's typically where it installs the first time. So we're going to go ahead and just delete that, which is helpful. And then inside of here, we can try to empty a recycle bin. But the thing is, weirdly enough, that typically does not work because if we go down to a later step which it might be in here. Oh yes, this part right here. We'll go ahead and try it. But sometimes that step won't work, and I do have a way to get around that. It's a little weird. But one of the things also is the easiest way to do this is if you have Visual Studio 2019, I would actually just uninstall that if possible. And the reason for that is it wants to be built now inside of Visual Studio 2022. And 2022 has a different compiler and stuff. Things are slightly different. And with the newest version of Airsim, it does not currently work with Visual Studio 2019. When you try to build it, it'll break. And the other problem with having Visual 2019 in your device is a lot of the times, I'm sure there is a way around this. If you do try to actually install with the Visual Studio 2022 open with the developer command prompt, which is this step right here, the build Airsim part, it actually won't work. For whatever reason, it'll try to default to the 2019, like it'll try to build within the developer command prompt with the Visual Studio 2019, which is not very helpful because it needs to be built with 2022 or you'll get build errors. That was a step I ran into that had a lot of issues. So I'm just warning you that before. If you still need Visual Studio 2019, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sure you can find a way that you can actually get it to when we get to this step right here, the build Airsim, the Visual Studio 2022, to actually build Airsim when you run this build.cmd command with 2022 and not 2019, because that is a big deal. Because for a long time I couldn't figure out like why is this not working. That was why. So just giving you a heads up on that. If you can, just uninstall 2019 and install 2022. But if you need 2019 for maybe other projects, you will need to find a way to actually get the 2022 version to compile with the 2022 version. I've said 2022 a lot, instead of the 2019 version. So yeah, just be prepared for that. But once you do that, it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so still on the topic of trying to get to the newest version, if you have the old version of Airsim, deleting it from your documents in the recycle bin is actually not going to be enough. And that's because you should still do that step. But once we go to this part where we try to clone it, what will happen is, because there's going to be some hidden files, basically it'll be impossible to actually delete. And if you actually try to delete that from the command line, it will not work. So I do have a command for getting around that. So what you'll do is, should just be open the terminal. I'm going to go ahead and run as administrator to make sure I have all permissions. And then what's funny is if you try to delete this from the command line and you don't use the right command, if you just do like, like the RM command for removing, it still won't work. It's really weird, but there is a command for that. So first thing we want to do is we want to change to wherever our Airsim is. So I'll go ahead and do real quick. Okay, so that was pretty easy. It's actually just right here. So we'll go ahead and get out of that. So you can see that I already deleted it in Instagram recycle bin, but it's still here. That's because there's a lot of files and stuff that don't get properly deleted if you don't basically like force it. So what we'll go ahead and do now is there's a command. I believe it's rm r force and then Airsim. We'll try that. Yeah, there we go. So now if we try to change directories into Airsim, it's not found. So if you do not do this command, this will never happen. You'll keep deleting it and you'll keep asking yourself, why can I still change directories into it? Like, why does it still exist? That's because this is the only way to get it to, like, I believe it like recurses all the way through and finds hidden files if they're there and deletes it. So I found this on some website, but that's extremely useful because this got me stuck for like an hour before I found this wonderful command. So run this, get rid of your old version of Airsim, and then from this point, we'll go ahead and go through the documentation basically like from the beginning, as it's the first time you're doing it, and then you should be able to get the update from there. Okay, so at this point, I think we've taken care of the people who had Airsim before and get them up to date. So at this point, we're basically all starting fresh, and we can go ahead and proceed with getting this installed. So the first step, as you can see, is to download the Epic Games Launcher. So you could just go to this website right here, just download Unreal Engine. It's pretty easy. I already have it installed, so there's nothing special there. I just don't feel like uninstalling and reinstalling just for the sake of the video, because it's already taking long enough. So just make sure you get Unreal Engine installed. Install this version 4.27.2. If you don't already have this version, I would still just, install a new version up here, and then you can, do whatever. And then as you can see right there, you can also see there's a set current command. You want to make sure you do that. That's covered in the documentation as well, but just make sure you do that because you might be like, well, why is this not working? It does not support Unreal Engine 5 yet. It does support the newest version of Unreal Engine 4, which is 4.27. So just do that, and then you should be good to go. So we could go ahead and do this simultaneously because waiting for this to install Unreal Engine will take a very long time. So we're going to go to the next step where we install Visual Studio 2022. So we're just going to look that up, Visual Studio 2022. And community's fine. I'll just specify that. There we go. And then we just do download Visual Studio. Amazing. So now let's go ahead and downloading. All right, so I'll just hit continue. It installs the installer first because there's a lot of packages and stuff that you have to specify. Also, if you have a version of Visual Studio installer currently on your computer, it might be out of date. So a lot of the times I would just recommend uninstalling the old installer and installing the new just to make sure. All right, so the next step is we went ahead and do the select desktop development with C++. And then what we'll do is we will scroll over here and try to find it. Yeah, so you'll want to download the latest version of the Windows SDK. So it says 10.19041, but as you can see, there's a later one out. So you want to go for this one if you have Windows 10. Go ahead and do this one if you have Windows 11 like me. The That's pretty much the only difference really between these two. And then I believe from there, we're good to go. Oh, wait, no, we're not. Sorry, individual components. The .NET framework. SDK, let's go ahead and find that. .NET framework, SDK. Believe that's what it wants. Let me go and come back. I'm going to make sure, double check before I tell you to install that. Be right back. Okay, no, slightly misspoke there. So when it says .NET Framework SDK, the latest. So just hit this. As you can see, it's like the latest. So that should be fine. And then from there, we are good to start installing. So I'll get back when that's done. Sorry. All right, at this point, so we're ready to go ahead. So at this point, I've done this so many times that I generally just kind of forgot where I was. So at this point, we're actually trying to get Airsim onto our PC, which I have not done yet. So we do have the tools to do so, though. So at this point, you want to open up your Visual Studio 2022. And I'll just go ahead and do that again, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So Visual Studio, that's not Visual Studio, that's Slack. Visual Studio 2022. Just go here. Okay, and then you can just continue without code. And then we go up to Tools here. We go to Command Line, Developer Command Prompt. And then at this point, we are going to come over, just putting my windows here, to this handy dandy git clone, which we need. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, perfect. So I'll get right back when it's done doing that. Okay, so that part kind of finished. So now we're just going to change directories into Airsim. And at this point, we will run the command build.cmd. And that's good. And at this step right here, what happened before, I was talking about it earlier in the video a long time ago, was this part would actually try to compile and do everything with the 2019 version, even if you had the 2022 developer command prompt open. Really strange how it does that, but that's why it's better to just uninstall it if you can and use the 2022 so it doesn't have anything else to use. So yeah, I'll get back when this part is done. All right, so at this point, the build is finished. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on how we can actually get it into a project. So the next thing that we'll do is we'll pull up this documentation over here, because this is what we want now. And then, let me see what I want to do next here. I believe I just need to open a project. Yes, I do. So they use like this template, like the landscape mountains. I'm not sure, honestly, why they do that. I feel like it's easier just to do it with a default project. So I'm just going to make a new project here. Oops, that's not here to do that. Let me go back. We'll just do games next, and we'll do a blank project, because why not? We'll select blueprint. That's fine. We'll just do Airsim tests 2022. That's a great name. We'll create that project. And then we will want to find this project actually in our files here, and it should be in Documents, Unreal Engines, or Unreal Projects. This is what we're looking for. And it might not be here yet, actually, because I just made it. So let me try that again. Or I could do this. File. I'm just going to go ahead and save. And yeah, there's an easier way to, let me just check again in File Explorer. It's probably there, but Unreal Projects, there we go. Okay, it's not there. Let me find a way to find it real quick. Okay, totally forgot. You need to make the project and then close it before you can actually access it. It doesn't like you accessing when it's open from there. So from here, we're in here, so that's good. And at that point, we want to edit the .u project file. Or actually, we don't want to do that. I totally forgot. I'm going to go ahead and open that again. So you can actually just open it from in here. We don't want to edit it yet. There's some things inside. We need to create the C++ class right here, and then we just do create class leave default. And that's because it needs that. It needs at least one C++ class inside of here to actually compile code in Visual Studio. Otherwise, it just doesn't open Visual Studio. So that should be fine. That'll take a second here. Get back when it's done. Okay, so at this point, it finished. After I hit the new C++ class and then hit next. And it automatically will trigger compile. So you might hear a little noise if you have your sound on, and then it'll pull this up. Okay, that's great. So at this point, we're going to do this part, step 5. Go to the folder for the Airsim repo, copy unreal/plugins. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that. I believe mine is under this PC. This is the step I was trying to do earlier. Users, solely, and then in here, we should have a repos folder. What are the odds I already passed over it? High, I'd say. Okay, let me just do this. Repos. Airsim. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay, and then somewhere there's an Unreal folder. There we go. And then plugins. And we want to copy this folder. Don't copy the path, copy the folder. And then we're going to go back to our Unreal project that we're working on right now. So this one right here. And we're just going to copy paste this right in here. Amazing. Okay, so now this is the part where we actually want to edit our .u project. So they did the landscape mountains, but we're just going to do this default project here and change some things so it will work. So let's see here. What do we got? Category, description, modules. That's all good. We'll copy this stuff down here. Target platforms. Biggest thing there is we need that plugins enabled. And then Control S. That should be good. Just double checking to make sure it looks right. Yeah, that looks fine. All right, we'll exit out of that. And the next part, config slash default game.ni. Oh, it's right here. That's right. Default game. And then we'll show up with Visual Studio again. And then add this last maps to cook part inside of here. Oops, there we go. That's what I want. I want this. Plus maps to cook. Control S, save. Okay, great. We should be done with that part. All right. So, we want to close Visual Studio. Go ahead and close everything. And then I'm going to close that too. That's the installer. I'll still close it just for sake of it. So now we want to actually go back to our Unreal project. There's some tests. And this is the part we want to... Alright, so we want to right-click the .u project. And then show more options. Typically it's there, and we want to generate Visual Studio code. We're doing 4.27. Okay, let's figure out what's going on with that. Okay, so all I changed is I would just copy and paste this from the documentation. I don't feel like messing. I think this is like a JSON file, but I think I was missing something somewhere. So just copy paste it. You could change the name to whatever you want to. I just changed the name of my project, and it should work. All right. All right, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and do step 9, where we reopen the landscape mountains.sln, which would stop telling me what's new. I don't really care. I love how long this program takes. Okay. There we go. All right, hold on. I want to close out of this because I wanted to make sure. That might be an old version. I'll be right back. So actually, never mind, it's done. So we're going to documents, Unreal projects. I think that was the wrong file I had opened, so that's why I was closing that. Airsim 2, that's what we're doing. And then we want to reopen this in Visual Studio 2022. That's the one I have, so it'll work. Okay. So now we want this to be debug game editor. We'll just hit this. We'll see if it fails. Hopefully it does not. Be right back when it's done. Okay, so at this point it worked, thankfully. So we'll just allow access. It said build successful down there in the bottom left. All right, so great. So now we want to find the player start object because that's what it uses as the actual drone. So that's right here. Okay. And it is high because it'll literally face through the map if you don't. Let's just let me make sure everything's right here. Okay, yeah, so that level looks good. So now we're gonna go to the window, world settings. Hold on, window, world settings. Where's the world settings tabs? It's the world outline. Oh, it's right here. It's in the bottom. I didn't see that. It's in the bottom left. Okay, so game mode override, yes. Airsim game mode is what we want. Let me just make sure. Airsim game mode. Oh yeah, and we'll go to that too. Edit our preferences. And I might already have this checked, but we'll search this. So search CPU. This is especially useful if your computer isn't that good. Okay, use less CPU in background. Okay, so I already have that selected, but you would just select that if you wanted to. Okay, so at this point, I think we need to save. And this is important. Make sure this is still there. Okay, so now let's go ahead and try building this. Setting up swarm connections, so we'll go ahead and allow access. Oops, a little slow whenever I do that. But I think we might have it done here. So let's try doing play. No, I want to use quadcopter. That's good if it asked me that. There we go. Okay, so you've done it successfully if you see this drone in here. So yeah, that's how you do it. Now, if you want to get out, you just can just stop the simulation, and then you're done. So yeah, the player start object will basically take the place of the drone. But yeah, that's how you do the new install of Airsim. So it's a ton of fun. It always is. It's always a ton of fun getting this stuff up to date. And that's part of the reason that you might be like, well, why are you even using this if it's so complicated? Good question. Trying to make it less complicated. Swarms.io. Shameless plug. Okay. Hold on. Let me find our website. Okay. I totally forgot the name of our own website. It's swarmsim.io. That's better. Okay. So here's this. And then basically on here is the team that's working on it. And it's really nice. You can read a little bit about us. But you can actually like register in here. I don't even know if I actually have an account registered yet. But basically this is an online simulation platform. And it's got a ton of really useful info and stuff in here. So you know, a lot of people can, if they want to be doing this, you know, testing their algorithms and stuff, they can do it on here. And hopefully it'll go through that whole process. But yeah, so you can see we got some basic environments and stuff. We have our own little drone testing algorithms right here. This is people with their own algorithms, like testing them out. This is a little bit of older footage. It's like search and follow. It's a different one. So yeah, just, you know, shameless plug. Might want to check that out if that's what you're looking for, because not everybody needs to set up this local environment. But yeah, so that's what that is. That's why I work it with in particular. Just stick with it, be patient, and try to follow the documentation. I'll link in the description extremely carefully because all it takes is the smallest little thing to go wrong. But yeah, so hopefully that was helpful, and thanks for watching, I suppose.